This is the Right Guys podcast, where the Dems are already beginning their pathetic resistance. And now your host, Josh Hammerling. Hey gang, this is the Right Guys podcast. I am your host, Josh Hammerling. Max is out on assignment today, so occasionally we give him a day off so he can go and enjoy his kids and whatever he's got going on. So he's out on assignment. We will be back here on Wednesday, both together, and we can't wait for you to join us then. And if you haven't told anybody about our show, go ahead and do that now. Make sure you like, subscribe, share, tell everybody that when we go live, because we got to get the message out as we approach 2028. I know you all just got through a big election, but to be honest, there's another big election coming up in 2 years in 26, and there's also going to be one in 4 years when we got to figure out what we're going to do once Donald Trump is out of office. So remember, the fight isn't always over. It never ends. It's Monday. I was sitting here enjoying the weekend thinking about what I should talk about. And the first thing that really came to mind at first was if you watch that pathetic boxing match between Mike Tyson and Jake Paul, I don't know what to say about that. Tyson looked different training than he did in the ring. And it's like he just went out there and for $20 million got beat up by Jake Paul. So I don't know what to say to that. Like, he was a hero before, he bit off a guy's ear and went to prison and all that stuff. But he was a really good boxer when I was young, and we enjoyed it. And it just didn't seem like it was the fight I was expecting, And it was just there to make money because Netflix made a bunch. There was a ton of betting on that game, if you guys didn't know. Or on that match. So it just wasn't what I thought it would be. Like, Tyson's not the dude he used to be. It's just not. But for $20 million, I'd let somebody beat me up in the ring too. I would just cover. I'd just cover. So I didn't know if you guys had heard, but the Dems, as soon as Kamala Harris essentially conceded the race, they decided that they were going to start fomenting a resistance to everything that was going on. Good old what's his face, super smiles and great hair out of California. He was pretty much saying that they were going to make sure that the state doesn't give in to these mass deportations or even cooperate, right, with federal law. And it kind of blows my mind. Anybody that lives in a sanctuary city, it's like they're trying to tell you that you're stuck with a bunch of people who crossed the border illegally, broke a bunch of crimes, and now you have to take them no matter what, right? Like, your sanctuary city, they got to live with you now. And that doesn't fly for everybody. There's been plenty in some of those places that say it's time to get them all out. But sanctuary cities have made and facilitated the people that have been coming over the border, right? They've made it easier. They incentivized coming over. And is it any surprise that once we get to this point, that they get a bunch of free stuff when they get here, right? And obviously, they love it when they arrive. I mean, I wish I could get a free $1,500 a month card, free housing, free education for my kids, all those things. I'm an American citizen. I'm too busy paying for it instead of enjoying it. But if you live in a sanctuary city or sanctuary state, you get more of it, and more of them poured over the border because of it. And I think a lot of this last election issues drove everything, and the Democrats tried to make the claim that the biggest issue going forward was abortion, which, looking at the way everybody voted, we clearly see that probably wasn't the case. Kind of high on some people's priority list, but the one that was really at the top two were immigration and the economy. Economy was number one, and immigration was 2 or 3, depending on what poll you look at, right? And immigration is just, it was the biggest issue. It was the biggest hot button, biggest topic that they had going into it. And people voted on it, right? I think that's why you got a lot of a lot of people that voted Trump, that's why Trump probably won the popular vote this year, is because the Dems overlook the importance of immigration. Because immigration has so many downstream effects. It affects your economy. It affects you culturally. It affects you socioeconomically. And it affects the entire fabric of the American way of life. And we are a very generous country. We let a lot of people in. And it's nice to have immigration. To some degree, when you have people that you do want here, you'd want them to be here. Where we start to draw the line is when the people are just jumping over the border with no care for the law. Right? Their first act entering this country is to break it and to break that law, or to break those laws once they cross over the border, right? And it's like you want to be kind, but they've broken the law. They've come in, they fill jobs, they fill sectors of jobs that not a lot of people want, or so they claim. And if you have read Max's book, winning any argument with the liberal about immigration stuff, then you know that in his books there are jobs. Like, there are people who want these jobs, and to make the claims that illegal immigrants fill the roles we don't have, that's just not true. There's plenty of Americans that want to fill those roles, but who can't, because they're already filled with people who have taken those jobs. And the other thing is that in the economy, it has a real tendency to depress wages the moment you bring in people who are willing to do the job for less. And that's even tougher on Americans, who are the ones who are footing the bill for all of this. It becomes tough when you try to compete in those jobs and you can't, right? You can't compete because you need a wage, because you're busy paying taxes and making the American economy move. So it's sad that when they come through the border, they're already breaking the law, but it is what it is. The law is the law, and they should have been following it. They should have gotten in line like everybody else, because there's plenty of people who are in line trying to become American citizens who very much deserve it. And we just can't stand for letting these illegals make their way over the border. It just doesn't work for me. It doesn't work for you, and it won't work for us as a people. But the Democrats, well, they've come out swinging since the weekend, and they've been making the arguments that they will not comply. Right? We will begin our resistance. So when Trump tries to bring in whatever group that's going to come in and conduct these mass deportations, they're going to resist in every way. And if you guys have not been paying attention and haven't been living under a rock, it turns out that Donald Trump made some comments that forced CNN to air at number one, and you can just kind of see the look of shock on the reporter's face.
Donald Trump confirming that he is going to use the U.S. military to carry out his mass deportation policy. Trump saying on social media early this morning that reports he'll declare a national emergency are true.
Well, now can you imagine? Donald Trump gets into office, day one, declares a national emergency on illegal immigrants. And that suddenly gives the president some pretty amazing and sweeping powers. A lot of folks out there suddenly took issue with the idea that Donald Trump using the army to deport illegal immigrants is just not how that works. I mean, it doesn't work that way. And they're pushing back. They don't like it. But it turns out that the army, the military, has some very specific duties, right? The army is here to do, as Rush would say, to break things and blow things up. That is certainly one of the duties that the army has. The other is protecting the borders of the United States of America. And it was created pretty much just for that purpose, to make sure that the borders of our country, which is basic stuff that you need to do when you're a country, you have to protect the borders, and you've got to protect the people within those borders. And you generally tax folks on making that stuff happen. It's how nation building works. It's how you become a state. It's how you become, more than just, some small nation state somewhere trying to fill the roster, right? And protecting your borders is number one. And the people that do that job very, very well is the army. They've been doing it a long time. They're the oldest branch. Doesn't mean if you're in the oldest branch, you don't get to play with the fancy new technology and stuff. It's just that's their job. They're there to protect the borders. So when Trump says he's going to use the army to run these mass deportations, that falls right in line with their purpose. I mean, they're meant to kind of corral the people that don't belong here and send them back. You kind of want to have a heart in some of this, but you got 20 million, 20 plus million. It might even be more. I mean, some of the numbers I've heard have gone as high as 40 million people could have come across the border, right? And in order for this to happen in a time frame that is reasonable, you would have to employ the army. I mean, it makes total sense. I mean, talk about the manpower. It would just be wild to assume that your local police and sheriffs could do it, right? Uh, Scott Thom, he just put in Article 4, Section 4 of the Constitution requires all who are in government to protect us from invasion. Trump will be the only one who upholds the duty. Wow, Scott. Yeah, I think you're right. I think they are required. I think it's part of the oath that they take to uphold the Constitution. And I know a lot of people have joined the military that take that very, very seriously. I've got an uncle who was in Vietnam who said that he'd step out there if he could. So yeah, that's their whole duty. But the army's supposed to go out there, protect the borders, and you're going to need a large group to facilitate that, right? Because this is stuff that it's not like on an industrial level, but it has to be done on a state level in order to be humane and safe. You got to have large groups. You've got to have the army going out, and that's their job. I mean, we've got to protect the borders at some point. We spent the last 4 years letting people just run across the border, bringing anything and everything in. How many times had the Border Patrol caught somebody who's on a terror list? How many people came across the border carrying thousands of fentanyl pills? And as a side note, a family friend recently died this last weekend from a fentanyl overdose. And where do you think those drugs are coming from? They're just not magically popping up. That stuff comes from across the border, and it is pure poison. But that's what these people are bringing across the border. And there's more to that. There's the sex trafficking. There's the odd cultural influences. There's even a change on the idea of what and when somebody can be married and how young that is, right? There is so much that gets imported when you bring in an opposing culture to the one that they've invaded. And it's just going to have major downstream effects, King. This affects us in ways we can't even see yet. And one of them we have seen is the way it affects our economy. I mean, the biggest argument against it that the Dems can make right now is that, if we get rid of these people, it'll somehow be detrimental to our economy. Well, I don't know about you, but I think there's plenty of Americans out there who want jobs. I think there's plenty of Americans out there who can do the jobs. But for some reason, we just assume that it's illegals who cause the economy to run. I don't think so. I think there's plenty of Americans who are lining up to make sure that they get those jobs. And I prefer Americans have American jobs over a bunch of illegals coming in. I mean, I'm all America. I'm all for America. I'm all pro-America. I mean, that's why we're here. So, I mean, that's their resistance, right? They don't want to be part of it. They're going to tell you that the economy is going to get crappier and crappier and crappier if you get rid of them. I mean, like all the Chicken Little stuff that they start to do once the arguments happen, right? They just start with, it's going to be bad for everybody. Or the inside jokes like, well, who's going to watch your kids now because you don't have like a foreign-born person watching your kids? There's plenty of Americans who will do those jobs. It might cost you a little more. But again, that's the problem that you bring in, because once you invite someone into your country that is willing to do a job cheaper than you, somebody will hire them over you. Yeah, you got to support your own people first. That's the way I've always seen it. We are Americans. Because if there's no bastion of America left, where would people go? What would be left to say no to this crazy world order that's out there that tries to rearrange everything on a giant chessboard? There'd be no free voices left. I mean, you want to live in a China where you can't even log in to the internet without the government knowing, right? America is unique. It has to stay what it is, and to be the core of what it is, it has to be filled with its own people, right? And further, when a bunch of people show up, they become a financial burden and strains on the entire system. education, roads, sidewalks, food, right? Look at all the strains they add. There's no net positive for a lot of what comes in. All it becomes is just higher cost, more strain, and like clashing of cultures. And I haven't seen a lot of it yet, but sooner or later, I got to imagine that if the birth rates for the US don't go up, the only way we're going to have people here is if it is filled with immigrants. So the best way to deal with it is to keep them out and have babies, gang. Like, and when did it become so hard to have kids in the US? Max has 2 kids. I can only imagine what it costs to have kids. If you guys have kids out there, throw in the comments what it costs to take care of kids these days, right? And those kids eventually, when they get old enough, will want jobs. Have any of your kids had a hard time getting a job because they were filled by illegal immigrants? I'd like to know. Throw it in the comments, because these are the things that won't get reported in the media. These are the things that they won't talk about on CNN, right? All they'll do is sit there and push the agenda of the Democrats that are in there. Their whole apparatus is just geared at trying to make you believe that immigrants or illegal immigrants are a good thing, right? I mean, it's been nonstop since it took over. And I'll be interested to see what it looks like as we move forward, especially with all the deportations that they go. Trump said he would get the army involved if you've just joined us. And, part of me is like, yeah, that's what we're supposed to do. And Tom Horn, he's one of the Tom Homan. He's one of the guys that's going to be leading the charge. And he was recently asked a lot about immigration and stuff like that. And really,
but you mentioned the resistance that some of these Democrat governors and leaders are having against what you and President-elect Trump are planning to do. How do you fight that? And how do you then kick these people out of the country?
Well, look, I wake up every day and the world's upside down in these sanctuary cities and these left-leaning politicians. They want, all of a sudden, my dad was a cop, my grandfather's a cop, I'm a cop, we're family cops. We're at a situation now where the cops, the ones who want to enforce the law, now we're the bad guys. But the ones who break the law, they're the victims. So if the mayors and governors want to step in the way, look, you can either help or...
I'm going to pause that right there, because he mentions the one thing. He calls the lawbreakers now become the victims, and the guys that try to enforce the law now become the bad guys. And that's become so true. I don't know when it started. It was probably like right around the summer of love, or maybe it was the counterculture with the Democrats. But they did a fantastic job of trying to paint law enforcement and people that enforce the law as being bad guys, right? These people who keep us safe, who help us protect the order, who answer when you dial 911. Somehow they all got turned into bad guys overnight. And Border Patrol agents, even more so. Like, you want to talk about people who have the toughest jobs and just demonizing them for the work that they've done. Like, when did that happen? Anyway, it pisses me off. We're going back. We're
the hell out of the way, because we're going to do this job. The American people give President Trump a mandate. We're going to protect this country. We're going to enforce the immigration laws. And look, I can't believe there's any mayor or governor who wants to push back on us. President Trump has made it clear. We want to concentrate. Our priority on this operation is public safety threats and national security threats. What elected official doesn't want public safety threats and national security threats taken out of his community?
You know what?
For God's sakes.
I agree. Who wouldn't want a safer place? And I alluded to that before, right? Like, how dangerous are some of these people that come across the border? I've talked to law enforcement. Some of these guys who have dealt with some of this crazy cartel stuff, some of this drug trafficking and sex trafficking stuff. And they have talked about things like murder houses, where there are people that are killed, murdered, chopped up into pieces, and they're disposed of, right? And this is the same groups that are coming over the border. I mean, that just means coming to a city near you if it continues. And the drugs and just the sexual assaults. Like, we're getting prisoners, not people that are useful, right? Mexico has this policy where you can't even enter in Mexico until you can prove you've got a reason that you will make Mexico better. I paraphrase that, mind you. How many of these people cross the border where we ask them, what skills do you bring the U.S.? What do you bring that will help make the U.S. better? And it was nothing. All they were given was a check. All they're given was a card. And then usually free housing. In Colorado, they were getting some of the best 5-star hotels downtown. Ton of money. And at the same time, they're out in the streets starting to run prostitution rings, starting to sell drugs, starting to run guns, right? And some of these people that come across the border, they bring with them the gang mentality. And the problem with the gang mentality is that it metastasizes, right? Everyone says it's no big deal. It's just a little piece. It's not real. But when these gangs start metastasizing, when they grow, and that's the problem with gangs, is that they grow. Because once you get it, it's like an infection that spreads. And if you don't do anything about it, soon you will look around one day and realize that violent gang crime has made its way into every city, every place. And I know it was there before, but now it's new gangs, new kinds of violence. Because some of these South American gangs are, let's put this in perspective. A lot of American gangs are just not that bloodthirsty. They're not. They're violent. They're mean. But for the most part, they're not as violent and as bloodthirsty as gangs from South America. They bring with them a culture of violence that is something that most people will, I hope, never have to see, but it's huge. And it's in cities near you now. They're just not doing anything yet because they haven't dealt with an armed populace. And there's actual honest police that have to deal with it. But when you bring that gang culture, suddenly that creeps into your local law enforcement because there's somebody out there who's willing to take bribes, right? You just import all of these bad things once these gangs take hold, and it'll be nearly impossible to get rid of them. Because if it was easy to get rid of them, we wouldn't have violent gangs at all in the U.S. So get ready for that, like showing up at a high school near you soon, right? If it's not all already there. Fentanyl in kids' hands, if it's not already there. Right. And that's what's been coming over the border. But the Dems are resisting, right? They're telling us it can't happen. You can't let, if you keep these people out, you're some sort of racist person, you're ultra-American, you're some sort of cop fascist, whatever it may be. It just plays out and I hate it. Scott's going crazy with me today. It's like a drama movie. Seriously, the politicians have these people in their back pockets so they can extort money from citizens for security. Yeah, you should see. I have heard stories about really dark places in South America where the police are completely owned by the gangs. And if you have any sort of complaint and you call the police will just come up and beat the crap out of you and to make sure you stay in line. So yeah, you can't kind of write these things. They're all, I mean, this is a script you couldn't write. You just could not write a script like this. And it's here and it's been coming here. Right? I mean, who bought a house last time that didn't have a bunch of crews running it that were from another country? When I first started construction, I was very young. It was all Americans doing American jobs. American houses being built by Americans. Right? My first job was at a restaurant. And these jobs now they get filled. Right? The competition for all jobs is just so high. And it changes us. It changes the fabric of what we are. And if I don't like it, somehow I'm labeled as some sort of super racist or something like that. It's been driving me nuts. They're trying to resist. They're going to make it happen. They will put up some sort of fight. They're going to do all the lawsuits that they always do. They're going to slow things down. I mean, it's the point. It's what they do. And, we're all sick of it. I think it's time for something different. I just do. And that's their resistance. There was all right. So all of you know that we love satire here at the show. We find ways to get laughs, and something hit on the socials today that I just started laughing. I sent it over to Max. I know he's on assignment, but when I saw it, I couldn't stop laughing. If you watch it and you don't laugh, I challenge you not to laugh. Because it's just, you got to watch this. It's hilarious.
¿Qué pues, pinche gringo mamón? Si tengo mi green card.
Thanks for your collaboration. And remember, don't come back again.
Y el gringo nos quiere cobrar el muro.
Dile que no, pinche gringo racista.
Pues no te pagaremos nada.
Wait a minute, please.
Somos gente honrada y
Apparently, that's the only way to get stuff done. I had to share that with you guys. Once I saw it, it grabbed me. I thought for sure I might get kicked off all the socials for it, but you know what? I'm taking the risk. I'm taking the risk for that one. So that's their resistance. That's how we'll respond. It's probably some sort of giant Trump robot. They'll go running out there, and we'll see what happens. So, and again, if you guys, you know, go ahead and throw down in the comments if you got anything else. I'll be switching gears in just a moment here to something that was, you know, happened last week. It didn't get a lot of play, but it makes me feel weird. So, as a guilty pleasure, if you guys don't know, I follow the whole UFO UAP thing probably more than I should. It can probably be an unhealthy obsession, but like there's some weird stuff in the skies. Like if you've been pilots or if you just look up at night, sometimes the stuff you see in the sky, you just have no explanation for. And a couple of years ago, there was a realization of something called AARO, the Advanced Aerial Identification Program. Basically, what their job was to do is to look at all the stuff flying around our sky, and do we know what it actually is? And the answer was always met with cover-ups, lies, you know, just shell games of information, stuff like that, discrediting witnesses. No, there was never actually a place to report the weird stuff in our skies, right? And Congress has actually made a place, ATIP, or AARO, not ATIP. ATIP was the Advanced Threat Identification Program that pretty much made AARO happen. But now people are required to report any kind of weird activities. And last week there was a hearing. Again, there's this guy named Luis Aldonado, or I'm mispronouncing his name because I'm terrible at this stuff. But for the most part, he came out a couple years ago and said that he ran ATIP and that he had seen a lot of stuff, right? I haven't seen anything from him yet that really blows my mind. But there were certain things that everyone always talked about. You guys have heard of the Roswell crash, right? I know most of you have, because that was the first time that people said that there were like aliens that were recovered by the United States. And recently, at this same same UAP hearing, they asked Lou Donato.
In the discussions,
We have
it's simply
biologicals.
about material, or is there discussion about it was previously testified that there was biologics that were collected. Are you aware of any of that?
I am, sir, aware of the reporting that biologics have been recovered. Again, my focus was more nuts and bolts, looking at the physical aspects of these phenomenon, how they interacted around military equities and nuclear equities. So I'm certainly not a medical expert. I would not be able to probably provide you a whole lot of value in that, simply because I don't have the expertise.
So what do they mean by biologics? What do they mean by that we've got something? Like, what does this all mean? Is the government finally admitting that there's something that we don't have a complete control of? Is the government admitting that there's been weird things flying around the sky for a long, long time? And we knew they do, right? This is a video of what they're calling the jellyfish UFO flying over a military base, a highly sensitive area. And this thing is just floating. Like, I don't know what that is. Is this for real? And have we gotten to a point now where we're finally willing to admit that this stuff is happening? Because that starts to open a whole new can of worms, gang. Like, have we ever fought one of these things in a dogfight? Have we ever met any of them? Is there a treaty with a bunch of aliens? Would they be illegal aliens? Would there be a resistance to that? I know I talked about that tongue in cheek, but man, we got problems at the border, and now we got problems in our skies. I mean, how many drones have been sitting there going over American military bases? Is this us or them? Their claim is that they're not from another planet. There's no evidence of extraterrestrials, but nobody's talked about whether is there another advanced race on this planet that has this kind of technology? If so, how long have they been here? Do we know who they are? Do we have a treaty with them? I mean, these are all questions that we need to ask, and we're asking the wrong questions of our government most of the time, right? We need to ask our government more pointed questions because they'll use lawyer talk to get around it. They'll just use lawyer talk. And this has always been a subject that kind of fascinates me. I've seen some pretty weird stuff in the sky, but you want to talk about a crazy year for 2024. I never had on the bingo card UFOs, Joe Biden losing his mind, unelected Kamala Harris trying to run for president, deportations starting. I never had it on the card, you know. And there's just so much evidence of everything now. So is it indicative of the time we live in? Like, there are people that believe in, you know, biblical prophecies and the end of world or the end of times. And is it playing out? I mean, Israel's surrounded by enemies. Joe Biden's trying to launch missiles or allow the missiles to be launched, long-range missiles to be launched, trying to kick off World War III. You know, it's just like things are escalating towards this final head. They're like, there's evil people doing evil things all the time. I mean, I'm just waiting for the earth to split open and some sort of red dragon to come pulling out of the ocean now, right? Nothing's going to surprise me anymore. And of all these weird things, are they going to pull something before the next inauguration? I mean, could you imagine using some sort of invasion or fake invasion to try to extend the life of the Biden-Harris administration, right? Creating a reason why you couldn't actually execute a peaceful transition of power. Heck, that brings me down to that subject. Do you think there's actually going to be a peaceful transition of power? I've talked to individuals who think that there's going to be some sort of counter protest that's going to make the quote unquote January 6th look small. And man, that would really suck. I mean, I hope they don't do anything. I don't want there to be anything like that. But are they just gonna sit idly by? I don't know. I'm worried on that. I mean, all the buildings down. A lot of the buildings I heard were closed as well, like the Capitol building, the Senate building, even the Library of Congress. All of them were just under lock and key. And I just don't think that they're gonna. I don't think they're gonna go out without a fight. You know, and if they do show up and they do protest in the same way that the January Sixers did, are they going to go to jail? Are they going to be rounded up? Right? Are they going to do a couple years just for walking in using the bathroom? I mean, if that was a protest, it's the most peaceful protest I've ever seen. And you know, now I worry that this next group goes in and tries to burn down, you know, our seats of power. It makes me nervous. But when stuff like this happen, at least shows you what's going on. It shows you that who's on what side. You find out who's who in these situations, right? You got those that you find out who are there for a strong American upholding the Constitution. And then you realize that there's people out there who don't. There's people out there that would see us undone, right, from the inside. And they import help to do it. And, you know, Scott's popping in again. I'm going to show what he said. Yeah, they have been importing armies from across the border. And I know he put it in the form of a question, have they? And I say maybe they didn't import them, but they sure did show up. Because once you have groups that coordinate together and you get large groups of them, I mean, it doesn't take many people to cause things to pop off, right? Everyone thinks that they live in such a safe world, but really, you don't. You're just a few overloaded police things away from like falling into direct chaos, right? That's why it's important that you're prepared, that you train in such a way as well, that you recognize what's going on around you, because these days coming could be dark before the inauguration. And if they are, then, you know, you have to be prepared, because there may be things going on simultaneously at cities around the country, right? The goal would be to overwhelm systems. And I think they have a plan like that in place, which, have your food and water. It sounds like crazy prepper stuff, but it's not. Being able to make novel ways of creating electricity and having a way to protect yourself is not crazy. It's just good preparation. Like, you should have enough to take care of you for a couple days, because if things go bad, the government's not coming to help you. They're just not. We see that all the time. So get your emergency food, get your bullets, get your whatever you need to protect yourselves. But I really feel like they're going to have some sort of big sort of inauguration kickoff. Maybe they'll try something that gets knocked down, but another summer of love on the horizon. Bunch of anarchists. I mean, I hope not. I hope it's just a peaceful transition. And it could be, because if you look at the way Democrats are bending these days, you're noticing that they're starting to play nicey nice with Trump. And it was Morning Joe and Bresna that were out there. Well, they went and had lunch with Trump. And they've been like the most anti-Trump people for the last 7 years, which is crazy. And then suddenly they're having lunch with them, and everyone's like, out on the cycles, they bent the knee to him. They bent the knee to him. And yeah, maybe, right? Maybe what the legacy media realized is that the liberal way of reporting things is part of not just an unpopular form of media, but a dying form of media. Because Trump now has the popular vote, right? That means the majority of Americans, which is more than half, believe in a certain way that the Democrats labeled as being evil or a Nazi. They labeled you for being a Nazi for wanting to believe it, right? There's some sort of crazy fascist, right? And that's where they're at on it. That's what they're willing to do. But they see that their legacy media is dying. So maybe they're playing on the nice, trying to keep jobs, or realizing that, MSNBC is for sale and you might be working for somebody else here very, very shortly. You never know. Probably maybe a new mega billionaire. I doubt Elon Musk will buy that one, but that'd be a heck of a trip if you did. But now they realize they've got to bend the knee a little bit and start playing nice. Or maybe they realize that the American people don't believe the kind of garbage they were spoon feeding them. Or now the election's over, the checks are going to stop so they can stop going after President Trump. So it's either one of those. But I don't know. I worry. There's days that I just want, I just want a simpler time, But if things are going to happen, I prefer they happen in our time so we can do something about it. Our kids are free to grow up. Oh, yeah. This whole politics stuff's kind of hard. Like, you see this stuff and you're like, man, have we really devolved as a society as to where we're at now? It's hard to look at. Hey, do you guys think that the Doge thing would be great? Department of Government Efficiency? Like, when I heard about it, I was like, oh, I'm going to love this. But, I mean, do you think it's actually going to pull off what we want? I hope they do. Like, I'm ready for stuff to be on the slashing board, right? We need to cut some shit up. We need to get rid of some of these departments. I mean, I think Elon could pull it off, which they're showing off double launches at the same time. That dude's got efficiency down to a way of life. But could you imagine all of these public spending? I want to see how it works too. But if they could just cut back, I mean, they're spending $1 trillion more a year than we're using. Like, we're trillions of dollars in debt. I think if they could just cut some spending back, we won't go into fiscal failure right away. It'll just take longer. But I want to get rid of some of that stuff. Like, one of the things I saw was they were giving hamsters testosterone or steroids and having them fight. Like, how do you get money for that? Right? Who sits there and thinks, maybe if we get these hamsters and we'll just put a bunch of the super serum into them, we'll see if they'll fight it out. That's where our tax dollars went. Back in the 90s, I remember Rush Limbaugh complaining that they were giving out government money for testing how much excitement people get from watching pornographic movies. I thought it was crazy, but it was real. Like, all this money goes everywhere. Yeah. Oh, we're not getting money back from Ukraine. If you think that happened, no, they're not. No, we're never getting anything back from there. That's a black hole. That's never gonna happen. And Biden's trying to pop off World War III over there. I mean, long-range missiles now? What is this done on purpose right before the next administration? Do they want Donald Trump to come in and already be in a war started by the Biden administration? Why even escalate the pressure? I mean, talk about the worst move he could have done, which makes me think he's not in control of the move. I think it's probably like some sort of AI or a group of nasty people are running the country right now. I mean, hell, I'm waiting for Kamala Harris to be president as soon as Biden steps down, like day before last day, right? Oh. But it's too much of an escalation there, man, and it's just a mire that the U.S. is getting sucked into. We're fighting someone else's war, you know. I don't know. And you don't want to see some of these Ukrainians get eaten alive. Oh, you know, I don't know. Man, the whole Ukraine thing is tough. Of course, we don't want the Russians like spreading communism like back in the 90s, but man, I just don't think we can just give them all of our weapons and call it a day. I think we're going to need those shells for ourselves. You know, BRICS is out there. You want to talk about a group heading, you know, in a train collision with the U.S., and that's what they want. I mean, remember when they said COVID wasn't there to take down the economy, but it sure does feel like it did. Just saying, the Chinese were bragging about that one. But that's a huge escalation. You want to talk about tensions with Russia going up. And if they just happen to launch one of those missiles a little too far and hit a target they're not supposed to or weren't authorized to hit, it's like a declaration of war. And then Donald Trump gets sucked into a war on the first day of his presidency. It would be amazing if like he negotiated the deal in the first week. Like that's what he would have to do. Donald Trump may have to negotiate the end of World War III in the first week he's president. And he'll probably pull it off because Joe Biden will try to pop it off. Because he's just stupid. Like that's what they're gonna do. That's what they're gonna do. That's what they're gonna do. You know. And then inflation's still popping up. I mean, thank you for all that money they printed during COVID. Right? There's some deep downstream, downriver effects from COVID. They're still gonna hit us. Right? Remember when they wouldn't allow us to talk about the conspiracy theories surrounded about that, and it ended up being true? I mean, what else is in the store? You know, what else is going to hit the bingo card this year? The whole Israel thing, like, oh my gosh, the Middle East is on fire. But, you know, Donald Trump just getting elected brought a little bit of calmness to the world. And Joe Biden's doing everything in his power to undo that. And that's where we sit today. You've got the current sitting administration who is lighting a fire underneath the house of World War III. And you've got Donald Trump standing with a fire extinguisher behind them, hoping it doesn't turn into nuclear war. That's what we're getting with Joe Biden right now. So, woo. Anything else hitting anybody out there? I mean, we sit here, we cover the news all the time. A lot of the same stuff over and over. I mean, oh my gosh, did you guys see that Alex Jones got raided because the Onion bought his stuff, but they threw it out because the Onion and the company that was doing the auction were conspiring against him. So he maybe end up buying it back. Man, they went after all of the conservative voices and weird. Like not that Alex Jones was super conservative, but you know, he says some outlandish stuff, but it's your right to say some outlandish stuff. Not everybody has to agree with it. But they really wanted to take him down after that crazy. I mean, he was on the air. He went on the air when they were showing up. They were in the building. They didn't have a court order. It's going to be really interesting to see how that shakes out because that could be like the playbook for getting rid of your political opponents when it comes to the broadcasting and media and stuff like that. You know, just wait for him to say one thing, sue for defamation, and roll out of there. Kind of interesting. And the Trumpster came out with Dana White this week during one of the fights, and it was amazing. Oh my gosh, the people lost their mind. The cheering happened. It was unreal. I'm going to share that one with you right now because, yeah, bear with me here. I'm getting it. It's hard to do when you're talking at the same time. and you're presenting this stuff. People practice it all the time, but let me tell you, it's hard to do. Here he goes.
Who is now making his way to the world famous octagon, flanked by UFC CEO Dana White. 45, soon to be.
People were fired up. Elon Musk is in the background just walking with him. That's Speaker Mike Johnson and the crew. Yeah, that's Kid Rock in the fur coat.
The sound in this room is so loud in here. It is so loud.
Dana White smiling from ear to ear. This is unreal.
It's always loud when he comes here, but now that he's won, now that he's the president again, oh my God.
I wonder if Trump has his own intro music.
So Donald Trump making his way to watch the UFC, which he absolutely loves.
And he's a UFC guy. He's been watching fights his whole life. So good old Trumpster coming out and being a hero. People winning. They love winners. But for the first time in a while, it feels like we've got some control. Well, it doesn't feel like for the longest, it felt like we were on a car or in a car, and the person driving it was so reckless that we were about to drive off the edge of a cliff, like just constantly on the precipice. And that anxiety about what Democrats were going to do when it came to anything on that road with like the economy and jobs and like DEI stuff and all of the woke policy, the summer of love, all of that lawlessness, right? They were driving that car, and that was the platform that they were driving with. And any moment, it felt like we were just going to go over the edge, right? We were just going to fall away, and it was going to be a complete disaster because the car's, it's ruined after that, right? And it's hard for a free nation to come back from its own stupidity. And for the first time in a while, now that Trump has at least been elected, right? I feel like we're not on the edge of that cliff so much anymore. We're starting to slowly pull off and away. And maybe we get to pull over and slow down and not have some sort of feckless, empty individual like Joe Biden running the country. Right? Maybe now we pull over, we figure out what's going on, we check the tires, we get to a garage and we start cleaning things up, because at our current pace, we're not going to be a country now if we don't do something about the way we're spending the money. I mean, we're doomed if we do not stop the crazy spending. And we've only got 4 years. Hopefully there's more than that. Hopefully there's I'd love to see a Republican win for the next 3 or 4 elections. That's really what it takes. We have to sit there, and it's going to take 25 years to undo all the things the Democrats have done. We have to win 25 years worth of elections. That's what has to be done to undo it and keep those people accountable for the job that we want. That's why all these picks out of Trump have been so great, because they're not the swamp monsters. We need the people in there that aren't sitting there trying to be part of the swamp. I mean, we need to be part of the people that are throwing diesel on the thing, setting it on fire, and then pulling all the trug out. Like, that's where we're at. And that's what we need. Let's just keep it going. Let's just keep telling everyone now is the time to think about everything in 4 years, 2 years from now. We already got to think about that election, right? We got to think about 4 years. Then we got to think about another 2 after that, and then 8, right? We've got to set ourselves up for a long-term set of wins here, because otherwise the Democrats are just going to keep doing what they do best. And what they're doing right now, do not be fooled, is rebranding, because that is what is part of their resistance. Is they are just simply rebranding themselves these days to come back at you in another form that fools you into some sort of confidence about what they do, right? They will find a way to bring DEI back. They will find a way to bring back like a shared economy. They'll find a way to try to publish or make healthcare public, right? They will find ways. They are just simply rebranding. All they're doing right now is trying to win the psychological game with you. And that's it. They're all playing nice right now because they're trying to figure out how to survive through this. And they're going to come out on the other side with a whole new set of weapons, right? And a whole new set of thoughts. And you've got to be so far ahead of them as they do it, as time moves on. Because if you don't, they will win again, and they will undo everything in a blink of an eye. It just, It has to be done. It has to be now. I would like to see things happen. There's this thing in anthropology. It was an anthropology. It was in the theory of evolution. I did not subscribe to it, but I did study it. And that one of the things in evolution is that you've got this thing called punctuated equilibrium. That's when something changes radically and instantly and suddenly becomes like a new species, right? Or at least a change in that species. And the evolution is like quick and fast. Boom, it's immediately there. And I just don't see that happening for uh, conservative beliefs. I don't think this is a sudden and about face. I think this is a slow trug, meaning that we've got to fight our way through it. There's no going to be immediate change in something that makes everything fantastic. I want it to be like, I would love the moment that we've turned on the conservative switch and suddenly all people in government are super conservative, right? And we get another Supreme Court pick. But that's not where we're at. This is going to be a slow, long process. But during that process, we need people who know how not to spend our treasure. How not to spend our treasure. And taxes are evil, y'all. Don't ever forget, taxes are evil. Taxes are evil. Taxes are evil. Well, that's okay. Max got the day off because everybody was here. So once you get me, all I do is go on the fingers and the thought. Thank you for sticking around. But if you like what you've seen here and what you've heard, go ahead, like, subscribe, share. You can find us on Rumble. You can find us on Google Play. Pretty much anywhere that you can get the podcast, you can find us. Like, subscribe, share, and make sure you tell a friend about what we do. Because the more you put this out, the more we can find. Make sure you share, like, subscribe, get all that stuff out there so people understand it. And remember, gang, that the war or Republican over only happens